Welcome to Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton. And on this episode, it's just going to be me and you, y'all. Yeah, there's no guest on this episode, but of course, there will be plenty of information to be told. Of course, OTAs, mini camps, all those things are going on with all four teams in the AFC South. That would be the Tennessee Titans, Indianapolis Colts, Houston Texans, and Jacksonville Jaguars. And with those things going on, there's always questions. Now, all of these teams, truth be told, all have questions going into this season. Can they do certain things? Are certain players going to step up? Are expectations too big? Those are the things that will be talked about. But of course, before we get into any of all that, of course, I got to get it off your chest segment. That's with every single episode, pretty much. In this episode, I want to talk about salary cap, the salary cap. Now, plenty try to talk about what every team should do. Oh, they should get this person. They should get that person. They should do this. They should do that. But you also have to understand there is a such thing called the salary cap. Now, the salary cap can be finagled. I mean, we see the New Orleans Saints do it every year. That's no shade at the New Orleans Saints. But, they go from not having any money to signing this person, that person, and the other a lot. So it is what it is. It can be finagled. That is true. However, the salary cap is there, and not every single player you're going to get. You're not going to get every single star player that's available. I've seen this happen with all the teams within the AFC South over this offseason in terms of their fans. Just got to understand, it can't all happen. The salary cap will not allow it unless a vet or a great player wants to take a significant pay cut to be on the team. So, while we're creating these Madden teams, things like that, people, I need you to understand that's not reality. Yeah, it's not reality. Sometimes you have to work with what you have as opposed to what you don't have. So that's what I wanted to talk about in the Get It Off Your Chest segment for this episode. But, of course, we got some questions that need some answers from some AFC South teams. The team I'm going to start with on this episode is the Indianapolis Colts. Now, for those that don't remember, the Indianapolis Colts almost made the playoffs last season with a backup quarterback. That backup quarterback is Gardner Minshew. Now, Gardner Minshew is playing for the Las Vegas Raiders, and he has been replaced as the backup by Joe Flacco. Yes, that same Joe Flacco playing for the Cleveland Browns, who was playing well, had comeback player of the year, and also threw a couple big interceptions against the Houston Texans in the AFC playoffs, or the wild card weekend, I should say. So that wasn't actually one of the questions I had in terms of the backups, things like that. The one question I did have is Anthony Richardson. Now, for those that aren't aware, Anthony Richardson is a supremely talented quarterback. And at Florida, the University of Florida, that is, he definitely showed some signs of being that guy. I mean, he has a super strong arm. He can run very, very fast. And he is a big man, akin to the size of a large tight end. Yes. He is a guy that looks like he was genetically created in a lab. Yes. However, of course, those results didn't show on the field all the time. Of course, missing passes, things like that. Now, I will say some of that was because of his receivers dropping footballs them right in their hands. However, of course, people won't look at all those different things. They will say he just was an inaccurate passer without giving context. But that's not me. So basically, going into, the draft, he entered the draft after, his season in Florida, in 2022, I'm sorry. Entered the 2023 draft. And then, of course, from there, rose up draft boards, ultimately was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts. Now, when he was drafted, I ultimately thought he was the best fit for the Indianapolis Colts in terms of Shane Steichen and what he's done with different offenses, especially previously being with Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. I thought it was a great fit. However, we did not get to see that great fit all season because Anthony Richardson played 4 games, got hurt. Now, for context as well, it says played 4 games, but he didn't finish 4 games, more like 2, maybe 3. So, just to give you that context, which gets to my point. Of course, he missed majority of the year with a shoulder injury, played only 4 games. Again, context, didn't finish all 4 games, but played in 4 games. So going into this offseason, he's had time to rehab, get better, get bigger. Apparently he's a little bigger this year in terms of putting a little bit more muscle on, things like that. However, there is still a question there. Can he stay healthy? That is the huge overriding question for the Indianapolis Colts offense this year. Can he stay healthy? We shall indeed see, but it's starting off. You do have that he did not, of course, he had some soreness in his shoulder that Shane Steichen talked about. I don't know if that's a big deal or not at this point. And I will be talking to someone from the Colts maybe next week about that. However, at this point, there is some concern, especially with a shoulder that you had repairs done to. That's some soreness. Some soreness is to be expected. However, that is something that bears watching. Can he stay healthy? And of course, if you have Joe Flacco back there, he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I totally understand that. However, he is Joe Flacco, and he's going to give you a few chances to make some plays if you're a defense. So that's what I will definitely say. It'll be interesting to see what happens when the season starts. But that's a question that the Colts have, and more importantly, their offense has to answer. Can Anthony Richardson stay healthy? Of course, the biggest thing is getting down and sliding and not taking a lot of those big hits, like another quarterback in this division does as well, which we will get to in a minute. However, yes, that is something to watch and look out for. Okay, I'm going to go ahead to the next team, which will be the Tennessee Titans. But first, we're going to take a quick commercial break on touring the AFC South. I want to say, before I do, let me also say hello. I do have someone stopping through that is saying, hey, well, hello to you too. And of course, when I talked about the salary cap and fans losing their minds about signing everybody, she definitely had a comment there. But yeah, we're going to get back to talking about the teams and, of course, questions in the offseason, things like that. But first, we have a quick commercial break on touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton.
EBO Beard Butter and EBO Beard Wash are 2 of the best beard grooming products for men worldwide. They help promote growth, keep your beard moisturized and soft, and enhance your overall upkeep of your facial hair. And with the new promo code MPAFC10, you can get 10% off on these products. Just go to www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. Again, that's www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. And again, the promo code MPAFC10. Again, MPAFC10, where you can get 10% off any products except for beard boxes. So treat your beard better today by going to get these the EBO Beard Butter and EBO Beard Wash.
And we are back on touring the AFC South. Again, thank you again to EBO Beard Butter for being a sponsor for touring the AFC South. I don't know if you can see this. Kind of got the I don't know. Anyway, I do have the beard butter that I use. It is definitely a great product, and you need to go on and get you some. If you ladies, if you're trying to get somebody, your guy, a gift for Father's Day, or you're looking for somebody in your family a gift for Father's Day, Hey, there you go. 10% off everything but beer boxes, EVO beer butter. You're welcome. But yeah, just want to of course get into the next part of the show, of course, which we're going to talk about the Tennessee Titans. Now, the big question that I have there, or that anyone has there with the Tennessee Titans, is the culture change. Now, you went from Mike Vrabel and, kind of buttoned up, kind of didn't really, he's pretty closed off in terms of certain things. Then you go to a Brian Callahan who's kind of pretty open when he talks to the media so far, and then also with the team as well. Just a little bit more. You can tell a little bit the vibes are just a little bit different. I'm just wondering kind of how that culture change is going to happen. Like, for example, give you an example. Chiga Kwanko, he said it just feels a little different, and just the vibes are a little different, a little bit lighter in terms of things, and just that's something that's going to be bear watching, because per Teron Davenport, I know when he was talking about Callahan and potentially him being a coach for the Tennessee Titans, he talked about how going into a bye week, he seems like this nice and jovial guy, which he probably is, but he lit into his team, his offense. I'm sorry, with the Bengals, about them being better. So it sounds like, hey, he has that switch. If they need that switch, he's gonna turn that switch on and be like, hey, we got to straighten it up out here. So, definitely it's going to be interesting just to see what the vibes are. Hopefully I'll be able to be out there and get to check that out and get to, talk to some of the players and kind of read the temperature in the room. Maybe, OTAs, mini camps, and training camp, somewhere around that, maybe I will, for those who don't know, I live in Nashville as well. So, yeah, so it'll be interesting just to kind of read the temperature of the room. But it just seems like the vibes are different with the team. Just the energy is totally different with the team. And, of course, some will say, hey, Mike Vrabel was a very, very successful coach, and, which he is, and he was. However, at some points in time, a change has to have to happen. And at this point, the change happened, and now Mike Vrabel is not the coach. I believe he's working with the Cleveland Browns now in some capacity. And now Callahan is the coach. Yes, he is. Brian Callahan. So we shall see what happens there. Another question we have, of course, the question that every Titans fan has talked about, Treylon Burks. What is going to happen with Treylon Burks? Now, for the offseason, the Titans brought in Calvin Ridley. They brought in Tyler Boyd. So Tyler Boyd is more likely to be a slot guy, and Calvin Ridley more likely going to be one of the outside receivers. With that being said, you do have D Hop that's still here. D Hop's still here, basically. So where does Treylon Burks fit in? Now, more than likely, he's going to be doing special teams. I believe that Brian Callahan talked about that in terms of, doing other things besides just being a receiver and doing special teams. So, hey, it is what it is, and he's going to fit where he's going to fit. But there are a lot of Titans fans that don't think it's going to end well, or there's some thought that he might not end well. But, the thing is, you do have 3 veteran wide receivers. You do have a talented young wide receiver. However, he has not been able to stay healthy. So, it is what it is. I don't believe he's going anywhere this season. And of course, injuries happen. So who knows? He may have to slide in one of those spots in terms of the top 3 wide receivers eventually. So, we'll see what happens, and we'll see how things happen from there. But, that's something that bears watching, along with Will Levis, because this offseason, the Titans definitely made sure that they were going to put together an offense that would tell us whether Will Levis is the guy or not. So that's something that bears watching as well, and the chemistry he's building with that offense, be it DeAndre Hopkins, he's already had some chemistry there, be it Calvin Ridley with building chemistry, and also be it with Tyler Boyd in building chemistry in that aspect. So it'll be interesting just to see how that all shakes out and what happens there. Of course, It's not going to happen overnight. Just like with Anthony Richardson, it's just not going to happen overnight with him developing and becoming who he is or who he isn't, or staying healthy. We're just going to have to see those things develop over time, especially with Traylon Burks, Will Levis, and of course Anthony Richardson, like I previously mentioned with the Colts. Another team I want to talk about is the reigning AFC South champion, Houston Texans. Now, everyone is excited over that team this year. Well, everyone outside of some of the teams in the AFC South, of course. But yes, everyone is excited over this team. I mean, look at the additions this offseason. You bring in the best pass rusher available in Danielle Hunter. You bring in Stephon Diggs via trade. You bring in Danico Autry, which I think is one of the most underrated defensive lineman in the NFL. Played for the Tennessee Titans last year, 11.5 sacks. Very, very talented. Can play inside and outside. Of course, D-tackle and defensive end for those that don't recognize the vernacular I was speaking with there. And then you have Azeez Al-Shire, who is a former linebacker under DeMeco Ryans in San Francisco. So he knows the defense inside and out. Just to be interesting just to watch, how that develops. But the biggest thing there that I think the biggest question is the second act for them. Now, for those that aren't aware, movies or plays have their first act or the original movie. Then there's the sequel or the second act if it's a play. That's where we are with the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans surprised a lot of people making the AFC South, the AFC playoffs, and then winning the first game against the Cleveland Browns. Ultimately, they did fall versus the Baltimore Ravens, but they made it way further than a lot of people thought they would. So this year, they have expectations. The expectations are they are going to be a major player in the AFC South. Now, or not just the AFC South, I should say, the AFC in general. Yeah, a lot of people are thinking they can make some things happen. And a lot of reason that's the case is because of CJ Stroud. The talented quarterback, I mean, coming out of Ohio State, I said, and if you want to go back and look, I said this on national TV, brother from another, that CJ Stroud was the most talented quarterback coming out of this draft, the draft class he came out with. And it surely showed in Houston. So there you go. But, of course, you also got to remember he is going into his second year, and there's a lot of tape on him at this point. Now, that's not to say he won't be successful, because he surely can be successful. However, there are going to be adjustments made to the things that he does well. Now, can he make the adjustment to the adjustment? That'll be the big thing to watch for him. Of course, he has more weapons to kind of make things a little easier, I should say. Of course, he has an upgraded running back room with Joe Mixon there taking over for Motor Singletary, or Devin Singletary, who doesn't know where. That was his nickname, was Motor. So they have an upgraded room there. They brought back Dalton Schultz at tight end, and they brought in Stephon Diggs. So, yeah. And then, potentially, talking to Texans fans and some folks with the Texans, John Mechie is actually healthy this year, going through a whole offseason. For those that don't know, he battled cancer. And is definitely in remission now and back on the football field, going through his first real off season healthy, actually. So he could potentially be a factor at some point. Potentially, you never know. But with all these different weapons that they have around CJ Stroud, I mean, it's not going to make things. It's going to make things a little easier for him, but also make it easier potentially to make that adjustment to whatever is going on around. That'll be just interesting just to see. But overall, it'll be interesting just to see how this team deals with expectations, because there were no expectations on this team last year. Let's be honest and frank about that. There were no expectations on this team last year. Zero. And they did well. Now, this year, everyone expects them to do great things. We shall see if that actually comes to play or not. But, of course, having one of the hardest schedules in the NFL does come to play. Although I will say, you know, having one of the hardest schedules in the NFL isn't necessarily what it kind of is cracked up to be, being that it's based off a schedule of or based off of how teams did in the 2023 season. Some of those teams may look way different than what they look like in the 2024 season. So let's take that, with a little bit of context and a grain of salt as well. But it would just be interesting just to see what the Houston Texans deal with those, how they deal with those expectations. And, and just throw another thing out there, another question I have, who's going to be their corner opposite Derek Stingley? It's going to be interesting to see how that develops. Kamari Lassiter, the rookie out of Georgia, from all indications, is doing very well. Of course, they haven't really, put on the pads and did all those different things either. But it's just going to be interesting just to see how he kind of develops, if he's going to be the guy, or if they're going to put Jeff Okudah in the slot, or Desmond King plays the slot, or if one of those first-round draft picks that on their third team, which is Jeff Okudah, by the way, who played for Detroit, Atlanta, and now Houston, or C.J. Henderson, who played for the Jaguars, Carolina Panthers, and now the Texans. If one of those guys ends up getting cut, which, my heart of hearts, I believe one of those guys does not make the team. We shall see. All right, but we're going to take another quick commercial break. Before and when we come back, we're going to talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars on this episode of Touring the AFC South.
A shift. A shift is something that happens and changes the dynamics. And that's what happened when Garrett Logistics was born. After 10 years as a sales pro in the logistics world of sporting goods, John Garrett decided to pivot to the world of freight and start a brokerage. So you're saying to yourself, why trust Garrett Logistics? Well, Garrett Logistics helps shippers improve overall workflow, along with increased on-time pickup and delivery percentages. Last-minute loads, multi-drop pickups, and more are part of the services with Garrett Logistics. They're available Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., all times Central Standard Time. So give them a ring at 615-400-8484. That's 615-400-8484, or you can email them at john@garrettlogistics.co or visit their website at garrettlogistics.co. Garrett Logistics, where the motto is, it's not just freight to us, it's your business.
All right, and we are back on Touring the AFC South, and like I promised before we went to commercial break, we're going to talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, of course, Jacksonville Jaguars started hot, and then they was not in terms of the season last year. Of course, down the stretch did not finish well. Offense didn't look quite as great. Of course, they did lose Christian Kirk down the stretch of the season, which was a huge blow for them. What we came to find out was a huge blow to them and their offense. So, going into this season, a few changes happened. Now, I will say this. They did try to keep Calvin Ridley as a Jacksonville Jaguar. However, it just did not happen. He ended up with the Tennessee Titans in the 12th hour, and they ended up signing Gabe Davis and bringing in Brian Thomas Jr., their first-round pick from this previous draft. Now, the plan was to bring Gabriel Davis in, I guess they're going to put him in the slot or put him outside or wherever they're going to put him. Basically, have him and Calvin Ridley on the field at the same time, and then have Christian Kirk there too. However, now it's a little different dynamic. You got Gabriel Davis, you got Christian Kirk, and then you have Brian Thomas Jr. Now, instead of having to build rapport with maybe one guy, Trevor Lawrence has to build rapport with two new wide receivers. So that's going to be something to kind of keep up with, how he kind of builds rapport with Brian Thomas Jr. and with Gabriel Davis. Now, for those that aren't aware, chemistry doesn't just happen overnight. It doesn't at all. Basically, they have to build rapport in terms of learning where each other is going to be, learning how Brian Thomas Jr. runs his routes, how he comes out of his routes, reading basically the different things or the different speeds he uses with coming in and out of his breaks, things like that. So that way, the timing is a little bit more on sync, and then I guess a little bit more where each other is going to be. Of course, with the flip side of that, Gabriel Davis, a veteran in the NFL, he's coming to a new team. Of course, he's got to learn him too. Both guys can take the top off defenses, and both guys can make explosive plays, which I believe that's what Jacksonville is kind of leaning towards trying to do this season. So that'll be interesting just to watch as the season goes along and that chemistry develops, because we, of course, like I mentioned, we don't have all the answers now, but we will see those answers once the season starts and as the season develops. Along with that, of course, you got to mention the new defense. They actually switched defensive coordinators. Mike Caldwell was the defensive coordinator last year. He got let go, and they brought in Ryan Nielsen, who was previously with the Saints and then with the Falcons last season. Now, he had the Falcons as a top 10 defense, by the way, last season. So definitely an upgrade in defensive coordinator there, just based off the stats and things like that. However, it's going to be a little bit of a change because now they're going from a 3-4 defense to a 4-3 defense. For those that aren't aware, 3-4 defense means you have 3 defensive linemen that are down there, basically a nose tackle, and of course, you got your 5 techniques and you got your 3 or 5 techniques. But then you also have your outside linebackers on the line of scrimmage. So it's basically like it's a 5-man front with a couple linebackers inside. Maybe you rush 4, maybe you drop out one of the outside linebackers, things like that with a 3-4 defense. Now with a 4-3, you got 2 defensive tackles and you got 2 defensive ends. Now those defensive ends this year will be Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen. Yes, Josh Allen will be putting his hand in the dirt more this season, like he did at the University of Kentucky when he was coming out into the draft. So that'll be interesting just to see how that develops. I think Trayvon Walker will be more at home, actually, with his hand in the dirt than he is standing up. So that'll be a welcome change for him, I believe. So it'll be interesting just to see how that defense develops there. Of course, you go in a 4-3, so you have more linebackers on the field, or maybe a 4-2-5, some just because of the way of passing. The way passing is kind of taking over the NFL. So you're going to have Oluquan back there at linebacker. But who matches him out there? Is it Devin Lloyd? It's Chad Muma? Or do you use it or another linebacker that they had picked up? Which, it's interesting that, they pick up linebackers, Chad Muma and those guys are there. But, we'll see what happens, and who matches Oluquan at linebacker there. But, of course, the other thing is the secondary and seeing how that secondary kind of matches together, which I still think that, DeAndre Prince has a real good chance to be a guy that factors into their rotation, especially at the outside corner position. Jerry Jones, a talented guy, but, I wonder if he slides to the slot. And Ben Savage, for all indications, they said he was going to play the slot, and then I'm hearing he played some safety. So I'm like, okay, what is it going to be? They basically said he was going to primarily be a slot guy, but of course, switched back on that, said he was going to be, of course, what I've heard is kind of doing a little both, playing safety and playing the slot. So we'll see what happens when it comes to that. But there's a little bit of confusion there. And then also Tyson Campbell is in a big time year for him. He's not necessarily locked in as the number 1 guy, meaning for their future. So it'll be interesting to watch. We don't have all the answers right now. Just want to give you all a heads up. We don't have all the answers right now, but these things and these answers will be found over OTAs, over minicamp, over preseason, and over the season. So if you just catching up, I talked about the Colts, the Titans, the Texans, and the Jaguars, and questions that are popping up in regards to this team that have probably been there for a majority of the offseason and will continue to be there through the offseason, that, training camp and through the season as well. It'll be interesting to see how these teams answer these questions or basically find a different fix to these answers if the answers they think are the answers don't work. So I want to thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton. Of course, you can find me on the artist formerly known as Twitter. Of course, word to Prince, one of the greatest artists of all time. You can find me on the artist formerly known as Twitter again at Mike Patton82. That's MikePatton 82. Again, the artist formerly known as Twitter. All right, and you can also find me on Instagram and Threads at that's THE, not THA, _general_MP. Touring the AFC South is on all listening platforms, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, you name it, we are there. And if you would, go ahead and rate the show, subscribe to the show, leave a comment, do all those different things. I greatly appreciate it. And if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead, subscribe, click the bell to get the notifications. So that way, anytime a show is dropping, you do not miss it. And I also want to say you can also follow it on YouTube, like I mentioned. And you can also follow it on, of course, all those listening platforms. I want to thank you all again for tuning in to this episode of Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. We're out. Peace.